Hello guys, it's JJ here, and today I'm going to be walking you through a CMG beat made from scratch completely. But before we get into the video, make sure to like, comment and subscribe because guys, it has just been my birthday, so I took a little break before and I lost my voice as well. So, show some boys some birthday love, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. And to show some love back, as it has just been my birthday, if you go in the description, I've got a bunch of free drum kits for you. And the latest one is on my Instagram, so find that in the description, go grab it for free, and let's just start the video. First thing to note down, we are using an instance of Contact 7, a band called Noir Pure, with a preset called Dark. It's essentially just a bit more of a subtle piano, giving it a more of an emotional feel, but use any alternative piano VST or actual piano that you may have. And to break on this pattern, it is very simple, to be honest with you guys. All I did was start off at the root note of C, taking it down to a G sharp and then into the G, and copying and pasting it once and then twice again, just to get a nice range of frequencies covered. But if we actually just, let's just zoom in a bit, focusing on this main pattern over here, it's very straightforward. It's essentially, again, look, the C taking up a whole octave again, as we could see. But the way I've got these notes going, they're kind of bouncing back and forth between each other. And the reason I do this is to give it a very strong emotional feel. And you'll hear that later on. Furthermore, looking at this nice little part between the G and the C, it's essentially a minor triad chord. It's just that this little note here is missing. And I just didn't put it in because it didn't feel necessary. And then moving on, we got this nice little top line, which actually repeats itself very simply. As you can see, every bar repeats. And then got a nice little bit of variation over here, going up from this G sharp back down into the D. Then I do that again for another 4 bar, but over here I have a nice little cascading pattern at the end, just to really nice and wrap it up, starting off at this G sharp, following its way down all the way into another G, and it just gives it a lot of emotion. Nice way to wrap up the piano pattern. But guys, before I play you this pattern, make sure you also click Ctrl A, highlighting all the notes as we can see. Then if you click Alt R, it randomizes your velocities, giving it a much more human sound, making it seem more natural. And another thing to do is, if you click Alt S whilst everything is highlighted, you can play with this time and tension knob to give it a nice little bit of a strum, giving it again a much more human feel. And I really can't emphasize that enough if you want to make these really nice hard CMG beats. And now, with enough of my yapping, this is what the main melody sounds like. And there you'll have it. Very nice, emotional, CMG kind of vibe, but let's just move on to the effects. Looking at them, it is very straightforward. I got myself an EQ, cutting off all my lows, ducking this little bit of a mid that I wasn't a fan of, raising some high mids and a bit of these highs here. Then I added some Soothe 2 to act as a compressor for the piano. Next up, some Valhalla vintage verb, as you can see with the preset that I just made over here, giving it a bit more ambience. And last but not least, some RC20 using this vinyl 3 preset. I just increased the wobble a bit and ducked the noise down a bit, giving it a nice little vintage sound. And then coming into the next pattern, we have ourselves another instance of Contact 7, but we're using a new band called the Strings of Winter, using a preset called the Violins, all articulations. But again, you can literally use any violin preset of yours or any VST. Expand 2 is a great option. Purity, I mean, the options are honestly endless. And looking at this pattern, it is very simple. It is just this one little pattern going on over here, but I just copy and paste it another octave. So starting off with the C, taking it up into a D sharp, then the F into the G, and then for the sake of variation, in the second 4 bar, all I do is switch it up over here with one note only. So instead of going from an F into a G, it goes from a G sharp into a G, and that's all you need for variation. So without further ado, this is what the violin sounds like. As for the effects on the violin, it is very simple. Got an EQ, cutting off all my lows and ducking some highs. Then I added a fair amount of Valhalla vintage verb just to add some ambience and make it a much more subtle sound within the mix. And if we look down here, I separated it around 70% to really widen it within your headphones. And next up, we got to have a bass preset from Analog Lab 5 using the Source bass, which comes from the Max Shooter and Easy A's Artillery Bank. Very great bass preset. It is pretty much a go-to to me. And looking at the pattern, simple and straightforward, following the root notes again, going into a G sharp and then a G. And that's really it. So this is what the bass sounds like. And there you'll have it. And now for the final component of the whole sample, is actually a vocal recording of mine. So I refuse to play it raw because it just sounds awful. As you can see, look, the hard proof, I did record this in, I did. It's a nice little vocal that I made for the sample, but all you really need is another vocal sample you can find on YouTube or Reddit, or if you want, do it yourself as well. I mean, I'd happily make a tutorial on that if you guys really want it, but let me just not play the raw vocals. As for the effects though, I did whack some auto-tune, as you can see, in the correct scale of C minor. Then I used some sound shifter to pitch it up 12 semitones because no one wants to hear my voice. Then I added a telephone EQ cutting off a bunch of highs and lows. Then I added some fruity delay free just to add a bit more depth to it, a bit of thickness to the whole sound. And then last but not least, a heavy amount of reverb because we want this kind of vocal to be drowned out, nice within the mix, sounding super emotional. And then last but not least, I actually took down this whole thing down 3 semitones, taking it from a C minor into an A minor. And then again, I lied because when I rendered this whole sample out, I took it up 4 semitones, then it went from an A minor all the way up into a C sharp minor, essentially just taking this beat from a C minor into the C sharp. I don't know why I didn't do that, but that is it. That is the process. And without further ado, this is what a sample for CMG sounds like. And there you'll have it. You're never going to hear the raw vocals, but let's just move on to the drums. And all these drums are from my kit. So then again, go into my Instagram, grab it because it's absolutely free. And you know, who wants some free sounds? So guys, before I start with these drums, bear in mind, I have now taken this whole melody up to 144 BPM to really up the tempo. Give it again a nice little energetic CMG vibe. But then again, you're going to be looking at the drum pattern, starting off with a nice little clap and snare pattern. All I do is grab myself a Sony digital snare from the kit and my go-to clap, lay them on top of each other and play down this very nice simple pattern which we all know and love. And next up we got ourselves a hi-hat pattern, which is also pretty simple and straightforward. Looking at it, it's essentially a 2-bar looped over 3 more times, making a total of 4 2-bars, which is an 8-bar loop. And to break it down, if we focus in on this nice little 2-bar right over here, first go onto this magnet tool, click half step, and if you look over here, that's the kind of roll I got going. And to do that, I click this nice little paintbrush tool, click a hi-hat. If you hold and drag, you can see it just plays the notes for you. And coming into this little roll at the end of the 2-bar, it's a simple roll again, except I just click in one note just to add that extra bounce. And then to wrap up the 2-bar, I've got myself this nice little roll again. Just get your paintbrush tool, click and drag, as you can see. And all I did was right click on the hair, drag it down, click Control B 3 more times, and there we have it guys, the hi-hat pattern. So this is what the hi-hat and the snare / clap sound like. And now we are onto the 808 pattern. It's essentially just following the root notes of that previous, C minor chord that we got going, but just took it up a bit of an octave over here on the right side. And for the pattern, all I did was lay a very basic 808 pattern, as you can see over here, and then added this extra green note here for a bit of rhythm. Then on the second half of this 4-bar, I added an extra note over here and an extra note over here, just for a bit of variation, giving it a bit more bounce, but then took away that note that was playing here. Then I copy and paste this pattern up here, following the root notes of A going into a G sharp minor. And the final thing I actually did with my 808s, guys, I click Control A, highlighting all my notes. Then I grab my mouse, click that little scroller wheel down, as you can see, and then push it all the way to the top so I max out my velocities. And bear in mind, I do this not just for my 808s, but also for my kicks. And the reason I do so is because it makes your mix much punchier, sounds more appealing to artists and also producers that are going to be listening to your beats. And looking at this kick pattern, we got ourselves the bow kick from my kit, very punchy kick indeed, following that 808 pattern. But all I did was click shift and down arrow, taking it from that C down into the B minor, just because I thought the kick sounded a bit better with a semitone duct. But without further ado, this is what the 808 and the kick sound like for a CMG beat. And there you'll have it, sounding super dope. But now we got ourselves the open hat pattern. It is very simple. All I did was grab the classic open hat from my kit and play it on where the first 3 808 pattern is hitting, giving it a bit more of an oomph every time it hits. Then I just copy and paste it 1, 2, but 3 more times, making it a total of an 8-bar, and that's pretty much it. But without further ado, this is what my open hat sounds like. And finally, to wrap up this whole beat, we have got ourselves the final component, which is a snare roll. I use this nice little DY snare for my kit, and I got this nice little pattern going on over here. The way I made this, to be honest, was going onto the magnet tool, going into a 6 beat, and I can't lie, man, when you're making snare rolls, use the magnet tool, go into a 6 beat, third step. It just sounds so much better when you do that. And on top of that all, I made sure that they were within the grid, making sure it's like, you know, in key with the whole melody, because that's how your snare rolls also sound a bit better. And looking at the pattern, it's a nice little spaced out one over here. Got 2 rolls going back to back, and got that kind of like little same snare bounce I've got going there and here. Then 2 little shorter ones, and that's it for the snare pattern. So without further ado, this is what the full beat for CMG sounds like. And there we have it, guys. But before I wrap up the video, let me just walk you through the beat structure. So walking through this arrangement quickly, if we look at the highlighted section, it's 2 8-bars making a 16-bar intro. First of all, I begin with a nice little piano, which also has that bass playing alongside my producer tag. Then coming into that second 8-bar, I come in with a nice little bit of that vocal, you know, that the boy did, you know, this guy right here. But I introduce that nice little snare clap alongside the hi-hats, and then the snare roll to, you know, lead it straight into that roll. Next up, I got myself the chorus section, which is 2 8-bars long, making it a total of 16. And the way I begin this is by playing all my essential drums, which is my 808 kick, my hi-hat, and my snare, but I have the main piano playing alongside it. And coming into the second half, all I do is place that extra open hat in, as well as that nice little snare roll and that violin. We're now on to the verse section, and the verse typically contains 3 8-bars, making it a total of 24. And to break it down, the first verse section starts off with the piano, the snare, the hi-hats, and that kick, but as you can see, these 2 come in a bit later. And then for the main part of the verse, which is that second 8-bar, I reintroduce that violin, play it 808 alongside it, and then have the snare roll at the very end. And now last but not least, we reach the final 8-bar, which is known as the pre-hook or the pre-chorus, because, you know, it's the 8-bar just before your hook, so you kind of want to make it grand, build up into that chorus again. And the way I did so was stripping away all the drums, reintroducing that vocal, reintroducing that bass, taking away the violin, and having that nice little snare roll to lead straight into that chorus again. But then looking at the chorus, essentially the same as the first one, and same again for the second verse. And then for the final chorus, all I do is add those vocals back in for the second 8-bar to give it a bit more of like a grand finale to the whole track. And guys, there we have it, a nice CMG beat from scratch by yours truly. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks very much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.